Started here. So, welcome everyone to this Gap Chat. And if you're not muted, you can go ahead and mute yourself. And I just muted a lot of you here. So that may have taken care of all of our noise. Yeah, looks like everybody's muted now. So you should be able to unmute yourself. If not, there's also a chat that you can do. I don't know how familiar everybody is with Zoom, but there's a chat. You can ask questions, and I'll have that up to the side. So even if you want to ask questions without interrupt, in the flow of things, just as you think of them, and then I'll kind of work them in as well. It's a little harder to see chat when you are on a phone, but I will put a message. Here is chat, and then that will allow you to be able to pull up that chat. Hopefully it'll give you a notification. So it's harder to get onto chat on your phone, but okay. So welcome everyone. I'm so glad everybody is here, and we are sitting here in different times. So I appreciate everyone jumping online, and hopefully this is a nice, convenient way to be doing a class. So I am going to pin my video. There we go, so it doesn't keep popping away. All right, I am hopefully going to be able to share my screen a little bit today, but my main goal of this lecture today is to get the basics of what is leaky gut, what could you be evaluating yourself or your family for, and what to do about it. So that is what the GAPS is. So quick definitions. GAPS, what we're referring to, if you don't know, is gut and psychology syndrome. This book and this protocol are designed by Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride. She is a MD in the UK. She also, when she found out her son had some autism symptoms very early on and was only given medication as an option, she had decided that there was more just from past experience. She knew there was different things, so she researched and studied. She got a PhD in nutrition, a PhD in neurology, and really figured out what to do and figured out this GAPS protocol. So GAPS can often be thought of as a help for autism or the autism spectrum disorder, but it actually, as we have studied, and even Dr. Natasha, she studied, realized many, many different illnesses, diseases, symptoms, if you will, come up in our lives because of a leaky gut. And leaky gut now is popular, but even when I first got trained as a GAPS practitioner 7 years ago, very few people had even heard of leaky gut before. It was just, that was something I had to explain, which was, it's funny now, right? In our world, leaky gut is such a buzzword. But so what GAPS is gut and psychology syndrome, meaning when the gut has issues, what happens in the psychology, so any kind of neurological issues like brain, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia even, seizures, all that way, to autism, even sensory processing disorder, all of these different things are affected. She also is working on a book that emphasizes gut and physiology syndrome, physiology meaning physical. So these are arthritis, MS, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, just different susceptibilities, eczema. We see those. She talks about them some in this book, but her next book, which I think it really is almost here. We've been promised that for years, but then she published a vegetarianism book in the midst of that. So I do think it sounds like it's very close to coming out, which is great. So gut and psychology syndrome is her kind of coined phrase for leaky gut and that connection, or GAPS. I want to explain this because GAPS is also what we call the diet. So gut and psychology syndrome, or the GAPS diet, or the GAPS nutritional healing protocol, those are going to be interchangeable terms. So when we talk about GAPS as symptoms, or a GAPster, a person who has GAPS symptoms, is what we endearingly call ourselves, GAPsters. That is different, but then GAPS diet or GAPS protocol is how you heal it. So they're the same word, so just to not be confused, for you guys not be confused. Okay, so let's talk about what happens in GAPS, because then we can very easily see when we start putting in diagnosis names what is actually happening there. So I have pictures. These are hopefully not too blurry. I'll pull them out of their papers. So with GAPS, we want to know what leaky gut does, because there's really a major, I want to say a play, meaning, you know, one thing happens and then another thing happens. That really determines why we have what we have. So let's review basic anatomy. This is, make sure the picture is good. This is a picture of the villi in our intestine. So these are finger-like projections, and these are where our food are absorbed from. So this is lymph and blood vessels that are going to take nutrients away from what gets absorbed from the gut into the body and distribute it to the rest of the body. Fun fact, technically, if things are in the intestines, they are technically still out of the body, because it's technically an open tube from mouth to anus. It's not inside the body in any way technically there. So when we say food gets into the body or gets absorbed in the body, what you eat does not necessarily get into you as a helpful thing. And so if that's not happening, you're not going to get that nutrition. So hold on to that idea here. So what we need, we have little cells. You see the little bubbles here. And then some of those are colored in as black. The black cells are mucus cells, and then the white cells are called enterocytes. Here is a happy enterocyte. So it's a very poofy, big guy. It has a lot of what are called microvilli, and then the bubbles on here are enzyme packets. So enzymes digest, and break apart our food. Then the microvilli absorb that food into the cell, and the cell itself is supposed to analyze everything that comes in and decide, is this food, is it helpful, is it broken down, or is it too big? Is it something that's a whole protein, or is it a toxin? So in a healthy body, all of these cells get stuck all next to each other really tightly in tight junctions, and they analyze everything that comes in. So the only thing allowed in your body is broken down, nutritious food. So this is the plan. This is how it's supposed to work. The birth to death cycle for these cells happens fairly rapidly. So if we have enough nutrition, we're going to get new cells growing, reproducing. Obviously, these are much tighter. This is just cartoon. And then as they get old and used up, then they slough off and die. So let's look a little bit more at one of those old shriveled cells. So this poor guy, a sick enterocyte or skin cell, technically an epithelial cell. Enterocyte's what we call them. So an enterocyte, he doesn't have much absorption or digestive ability, right? And then he's also shriveled, so can't do a lot of work. And also they do pull apart, these cells do. So now we have holes and channels that go through. So when they say the phrase leaky gut, it truly is leaky. It truly does allow, like a sieve, things coming in without the proper analysis that happens when you have a fully healed gut lining. How do we know if you have a leaky gut, right? That's really the question that we need to answer. And the biggest things are, going off this anatomy, if you have malabsorption of food, you probably have a leaky gut. You probably have a lot of these, right? And if you have things coming in that you're reacting to, you probably have a leaky gut. What are things that can come in? Toxins can come in. Toxins come in from the food you eat and the chemicals, but even if you eat a fully clean diet, excuse me, even if you eat a fully clean diet, if you have bad gut flora, which we're going to talk about in a second, if you have bad gut flora, that flora will produce toxins that comes through. Okay, number 2, what else can come through? Proteins that are too big. So our body works with amino acids. Those are, the little pieces in the protein chain. If you get amino acids in our body, the body's like, great, I know how to use these. I'll use them in this cell to repair it, and I'll use it over here for this metabolic process. But if you have whole proteins coming in, that whole protein is a chicken meat protein or a kale protein or a, insert whatever you may have allergy tested for at any point in your life protein. Well, the problem is not the protein. The problem is that the protein still looks like a protein when it comes into the bloodstream, as opposed to being an amino acid when it gets analyzed and allowed into the bloodstream. So when we have any allergy at all, including to hay fever, cats and dogs, any kind of food, including just an intolerance all the way to an anaphylactic reaction, all of those only can happen if that protein somehow got into our bodies. The only way for it to get into our body is if the membrane of our body, either skin, mucous membrane, gut lining, which are all the same type of cells, is leaky. Okay, hopefully you guys are all with me so far. So what makes the gut lining leaky? There's two major things. One is we don't have the right nutrients to keep the cells tight, the junctions tight, the cells healthy, and all of that. And number two, we do not have the proper gut flora to maintain healthy cells. One of the main roles of the gut flora, right, the microbiome, we've talked and we are studying that a lot in our world. We've talked about that. You've probably heard about that a lot. You know, take probiotics, get some fermented foods, all those things. Why? Why does that help? Number one, it does help keep pathogens out. Number two, toxins are bound by good flora. So if you have good bacteria in your gut and something comes in that's a poison or a chemical, which is a poison, by the way, it will grab onto that and either denature it or just hold on to it and keep it in the stool so it can be eliminated from the body. So that's why gut flora does. Gut flora also will maintain healthy enterocyte cells. These guys and this birth-death cycle, this is maintained largely by the action of our gut flora. So if we don't have good flora kind of running the show, then it's all going to run amok. There's going to be problems with keeping, good guys. It's going to be problems with the birth cycle. That birth cycle should happen about every 5 days. 3 to 5 days is the turnover time for you have all new cells in your gut lining if you're getting enough nutrition. That's really fast. It's really great because when we start healing the gut, it happens pretty quickly, at least some of the action. You get relief of some symptoms very quickly. So we have maintenance of the lining. If the lining is not maintained, then things go downhill. Stuff gets in. Now we have more and more sick guys, so we have less absorption of nutrients, and things really spiral down because less nutrients, less cells are going to be able to be made, and then these guys have to do their job, even longer, and these old guys just keep getting further and further and further down this villi, so we get a more and more permeable leaky gut. So then our symptoms will get worse because more toxins come in and more proteins come in, and we have less food to repair the damage less nutrition to repair the damage that's happening. So you guys see how it kind of spirals downwards. So when we look at symptoms of leaky gut, so let's back up and kind of go to the list of symptoms of leaky gut. Any food allergy or any environmental allergy shows that you have a leaky membrane. Anyone with toxicity symptoms, so let me tell you what's in that camp. Arthritis, ringing in your ears, any kind of skin issues, an eczema or just a rash that comes and goes. I'm trying to think of other skin. Those are the main, just even dry skin can be a skin issue. Anyone, if you have liver issues, maybe not like on your blood work liver issues, but you just know, I can't digest fat very well. I can't process histamine very well. I can't process salicylates or oxalates. Any of those things, that's a liver issue, and the liver is probably overwhelmed with dealing with toxins, and it just can't handle the extra histamine or any histamine or oxalates or things like that. So liver issues, skin issues, breathing issues. If we have asthma or reactive airway disorder, those are toxins coming out from our lungs. The body's trying to get rid of them, and they're damaging the tissue as they come out, so now we're getting inflammation in our lungs. Chronic sinusitis, especially without an infection, to just like runny nose here and there, always stuffy in the morning. Bags under the eyes are going to be a nutritional deficiency. Bags under the eyes, geographic tongue, cracks in the corner of the lips, dry skin can all be a fatty acid deficiency, which relates both to the liver as well as just are you getting the nutrition in. Then we have B vitamin deficiencies, which are very common. partly because B vitamins are often made by our flora, our gut flora. So if we don't have good flora, no B vitamins, ridges in the nails, cracks again in the corners of your mouth, heart. If you feel your heart at all, you probably are B vitamin deficient. And let's see, what's the other big one? Not being able to sleep, insomnia that can be both from toxins, just irritating things, and also not being fed well or not having enough B vitamins for your body to settle into a good sleep. Ringing in the ears is a toxin irritation of the auditory nerve often, or other issues. And then we get into the more diagnosable things, right? Seizures, autism, depression, anxiety. Let's talk about those for a second. When we have toxins floating around in our body that are unbound, then they can go sit on receptor sites and block the action of things like serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine. We also maybe not have the building blocks to build enough serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, all those happy hormones. So the combination of that often will lead to a depression or an anxiety. Anxiety is more the toxins are just always kind of touching these receptor sites and you just get ramped up. A depression is more when the serotonin and dopamine is not made or it's blocked. So we have all those kind of issues. If we're looking at for kids, kids are going to be things more like mood issues, meaning quick to anger, having fits where they can't even hear you, right? They're so upset that they are in such a worked up sensory overload place. They can't even hear you. They can't even tell you're trying to give them a hug, right? That kind of thing, to the much less extreme, like when we're PMSing women, right? Just at the moment's notice, we fly off the handle. That toxin irritation level is so high that it doesn't take much to tip us off into a place where we can't self-control the way we would want to. So think of that for kids. They're easy to cry, or they're easily anxious. They may act out if you try to leave, or in certain situations will lash out aggressively, but it's really a stress response because they're afraid of something. So all of those different things can happen with kids. And then we see sleep issues with kids. We see bedwetting with kids and adults. Interstitial cystitis is an overload and irritation of toxins. Asthma and lung stuff is pretty common. Eczema is super common. And then food intolerances, and then picky eating. Picky eating is one of the first signs. Picky eating, constipation, and colic are what I tell parents to watch out for in their babies and little ones, because if we change what's happening then, we often can prevent really significant symptoms later. Constipation can happen because so many reasons. Often it's related to gut flora. So the flora is not, it's producing toxins. Some toxins paralyze things. So it paralyzes the gut lining, so it doesn't do the peristaltic action to get the stool going. That's also B vitamin deficiency. Sometimes it paralyzes open the sphincter in our stomach. Can't go that low because you can't see, but it paralyzes open the sphincter from our esophagus to our stomach, and then we get acid splashing up, which we call heartburn or colic if it's in babies, or reflux, right? So this is from toxins growing, or bacteria growing, releasing toxins, paralyzing this, allowing acid to splash up. And then picky eating. When we have, and you guys stop me if I'm going too fast, but you can rewatch this now because we're recording it. So when we have gut flora in our bodies that are not doing good for us, Candida is the easiest example to take. So Candida is a yeast. Yeasts, candidas, and bugs, by the way. So lice is going to fall in this category. Even potentially, I have a theory about getting more mosquito bites, just any kind of that bothered by insects, including kind of the yeast and fungus family. They are there to clean up the dead stuff, right? That's what funguses do. That's what flies do, right? They eat the dead stuff and keep things clean. Well, if we have really slow generation and tons of old cells that are pretty much dying and not getting repaired, we are going to have more dead stuff for Candida and other things to eat. When that Candida now gets overgrown in our bodies because there's so much decomposing material for it to take care of, If that's not there, or if it kind of tips the scale, now it's going to want other things to eat, because it's not going to be able to eat healthy tissue very well, which is good. So it wants sugar, it wants carbohydrates. And so we'll start getting cravings from the candida that's been allowed to overgrow because of the situation we're in. And now you have cravings that are not good for your body, because it just actually feeds that candida, which makes more cravings. It potentially will start eating healthy tissue. So we don't want that. So that picky eating, right? Mostly when kids picky eat, they are still really fine to eat a cookie. Like, very few kids are not okay to not eat cookies. If they are, that's a whole nother thing. I won't go there. So, you know, cookies, rice, white tortillas, just things that are pretty much pure starch and carbohydrates, which are what's feeding the yeast, feeding the candida. And when they eat, or you eat things that are healthy for the immune system, like a probiotic, like meat stock, that actually causes the immune system to kill the candida, which produces temporary unpleasant things, like really bad taste in the mouth. Some people will describe it like eating sauerkraut leaves an acetone, right, nail polish remover taste in their mouth, because the interaction of the good and bad microbes in the mouth, the byproduct instantaneously is an off-gassing, or an alcohol content. There's all these different byproducts that they're awful. So when I just had someone the other day, when someone tells me, like, especially a kid comes and tells me, I just can't eat sauerkraut because it's so gross. If they have you can see it in their face, this is a really strong reaction to the thing that I just told them that they should be eating, like a ferment. When that happens, I know that there's a flora interaction happening in their mouth. And so I kind of question them, and I let them know, hey, what does it taste like? Because I think sauerkraut tastes really nice. And so this person was like, very, very like gross and vinegar, which I get, but sauerkraut does not taste like vinegar to me. Sauerkraut has a tangy taste, but it doesn't have that type of bitterness, right? So that bitterness is probably coming from a die-off reaction in her mouth. Quick little tip, oil pulling with coconut or olive oil for a couple weeks can often get a lot of that die-off and toxins out, and die-off taken care of, because coconut oil is antimicrobial. So oil pulling for a couple weeks is often helpful, and then usually you can kind of start getting ahead of the die-off and actually manage to start eating ferments. So there's a little tip. Okay, let me just review. So in kids, we talked about what's in kids. Anyone has any questions about, am I leaving out a big category? Sleep, mood, eczema, or any skin rash, really, because that just, if the liver is overwhelmed, it pushes stuff out through the skin. So any skin issue is going to be a liver overwhelm, which came from toxins, probably from your bad gut flora. That now also shows you have a leaky gut. Any kind of allergies, any food allergies. Most people are allergic if they get allergy tested, and you'll hear this phrase I hear all the time. It's all the foods I ever ate, which is true, because those were the foods coming in through this hole right here. So of course you're going to react to foods that you ate, or foods that are common exposures. And there's different things, even if you don't eat them, there's different things that we can get exposed to. So vaccines, for example, some contained egg, peanut, and different animal DNA. So we may see an exposure to peanuts, a reaction to peanuts in someone with a vaccination who's never actually eaten peanuts before, because they did actually have an exposure, even though it wasn't through food. So there's lots of little intricacies with that. But any allergy, any skin issue, mood stuff, kids should be happy, and like, it's fine if they're tired, right? But if they should be well rested, they should be happy generally. Reasonable, learning, curious, so all those different things. And then sleep issues. Those are the main things that we see in kids. In adults, we see a whole gamut of things, because we have been around longer, so we have more toxins. We also have more self-control. than a child does. So you may be able to control your moods a little bit better, and then things will get worse before you start addressing something. But again, any allergy, any hay fever, any skin issue, any mood something, if your neurotransmitters are getting messed with, that they're out of balance, you've got a nutrition problem or a leaky gut toxic problem. Any kind of autoimmune disease, which we also see in kids now as well, but any kind of autoimmune disease is going to, that is essentially something got in and caused enough damage for the body to react to itself. So a leaky gut has to precede autoimmune disease, no matter what it is. So we see that in kids. And then also we now see sensory processing disorder. You know, there are quite a few adults with autism, for example, now, because it's been a long time. Autism is really a toxic cloud. Ooh, let's talk about that. That was the one thing I kept skipping over. Brain fog. Don't we all have some brain fog, or have you not at some point experienced brain fog? Brain fog is toxins clouding the brain, getting in the way, again, same thing, of neurotransmitter receptors that produce a clearness. They also may be attacking the different neuro pathways or dendrites or things like that with toxins, with a little inflammation now, because the immune system is helping get the toxins away. And that work just produces a lot of mess of chemical messengers. And so it's hard to think through that. That can get so extreme as with an autistic child that is nonverbal, because their brain is so clouded, they never could figure out how to talk. Sorry, we are gonna have to pause. I forgot to upgrade my Zoom to be more than a 40-minute talk. So let me pause and do that really quick. I am very sorry. I knew there was something on my to-do list to do. Right. Okay. Continue. Okay. Good news, my credit card was already stored, so I am almost done. Perfect. We now have unlimited minutes. Hooray. Hopefully you guys are still here. Perfect. Awesome. Okay. So brain fog, right? Brain fog can be as simple as you just can't quite get clear. It takes you a little while, or you have to do ginseng, or some kind of thing. Mostly it's toxins just clouding things, because a lot of people find success just having like doing an Epsom salt bath, and the next day they're finding that they're more clear. Or if you juice for about 24 hours, people who do like a 24-hour juice fast, often within 24 hours, you've significantly changed your mental clarity. I don't know how many of you have experienced that. So that was getting toxins out of your body, and then your brain now has room and space. But then again, we can get as extreme as kids with autism, for example, that are nonverbal because their brain was so clouded it never could distinguish the noise from your voice, and they never learn, they can't learn how to do sounds. And other things, like they can't really recognize their parents' faces versus a stranger. It's very common for autistic children to grab the hand of a stranger and walk off with them, because there's no difference in their brain beyond that this is an adult or this is a person. So those connections are there, but it makes so much sense when you go, well, what happened? What happened is the brain fog didn't allow them to learn. And unlike us, that we already know this is my husband and this is my child and this is how to talk, when a child grows up in that environment and the crucial stages in which they are supposed to be learning them and they can't, it takes a significant amount of back therapy to figure out how to do that. So that's really what's going on there. Does that all make sense? Okay, great. So those are symptoms. Hopefully with that kind of section, you get an idea of who would benefit from a leaky gut, which is my answer, which is most Americans would benefit. Now, does everyone have to do the strict GAPS protocol? No, although more and more the answer is becoming yes, because we just are living in an increasingly toxic world. And our nutrition is becoming less dense because our soils, we're not using proper farming practices. So our soils are becoming with less nutrients, which means the plants can't get the nutrients because they have to get them from somewhere. And so we now are eating less dense foods, even if you're eating organic foods. Biodynamic foods are better, much, much better, because they're using manure to put stuff back into the soil, but it still is, overall, as a food source, our food is getting less nutritionally dense. So less nutrition for us to use. Number two, we have more toxins in our world. Now I want to talk about the GAPS protocol. The GAPS protocol is broken up into 3 pieces, and each one is very important. The one that is talked about the most and takes the longest is the GAPS diet, what foods we eat. But we also need to do detoxification, and we also need to do supplementation. So let's talk about detoxification. Let's talk about supplementation first, because I want to frame what we're going to talk about in this. When we talk about supplementation, meaning additional concentrated nutrients, we are only going to look at those from a whole food stance. So the basic bottom line supplementation from GAPS are fermented cod liver oil, which is great, green pastures or rositas. Green pastures is a bonus because you can get concentrated butter oil, which is another very dense food. So concentrated butter oil plus fermented cod liver oil from green pastures is very different, or rositas are very different than any other brands of cod liver oil, even ones that are like decent. Nordic Naturals, Carlson's are okay. I consider them good quality, but they are not a dense food because they still add synthetic nutrients to their mixtures. These two don't. We look at iodine. Iodine is very important for our cells' detoxification, the cell structure of the membrane, to not get cysts, for example, or cells that overgrow. There's a lot of research about iodine deficiency in cancers, right? So that kind of like keeping cells the way they should be and clean, iodine is very helpful. Also for our thyroid, which is really important for a lot of people in our world, that a lot of toxins, most of us are exposed to toxins that attack our thyroid. So it's a significant thing to support. And a probiotic, potentially. You can do GAPS without a powder probiotic, but you have to commit to doing between 7 and 9 different ferments a day or a week. So 7 to 9 different ferments that you rotate on a weekly basis that have at least 1 time a week, if not more. So you have to have a huge variety and be eating about half a cup of ferments, quarter to half a cup per meal. So you can do it with food. There's a significant amount of probiotics. We also could take a probiotic supplement and you get 1 billion little probiotic guys in a capsule. So a lot of people, that is more manageable, especially getting started, until they're good at ferments and have built up a repertoire and all that kind of stuff. I'm missing one. Sometimes we do omega-3 oils, like a really good small batch fish oil. That's not always necessary for everyone, depending on what your diet was previously, but it can be an important one. And there's one more I'm missing. Cod liver oil, probiotics, iodine. Other minerals are good too. We're going to talk about that. It's right on the tip of my tongue. But those are the... I don't want to move on until I think of it. Probiotics, cod liver oil, iodine. Well, maybe I'm making up that there's another one. There are some other ones I use kind of commonly depending on the person, but those are the main ones. So why do we do those? Because they're so incredibly dense in healing nutrients. Iodine we talked about, probiotics we talked about. Cod liver oil is very high in vitamin A and D. It also is high in vitamin K2 when you get the concentrated butter oil. This helps move calcium around, which helps keep away leg cramps and muscle cramps, which can happen on GAPS because of the just toxins that are getting moved. It also helps with healing. So A and D help with brain function, adrenal function, fatigue, immune function, and hormones. kind of important things. So those are really dense. Oh, thank you. Nut and seed oils. Thank you, Bonnie. So nut and seed oils are for some, especially with certain symptoms, it's good to try them, like a primrose oil, for example, or a flaxseed, but you have to be very careful not to get these in a rancid form, which is hard. You have to get small batches, really, more expensive ones, but you can get them. Different people, especially if you have pain, chronic pain is often a fatty acid deficiency. So trying out the different nut and seed oils is going to, you'll find out, okay, when I take this primrose oil, my pain is almost gone. But when I miss it, it's not. So for you, you're deficient in that fatty acid pathway, so we want to keep going with that nut and seed oil for at least 6 months to kind of fill you back up. And then when your pain's gone, when your symptoms gone, you can try being without it, or just see if you can get it from food, or maybe once a week or something like that as a supplement. Nut and seed oils are also, you want to use with caution with a few different things, especially seizures. So the seizure activity can increase with the influx of that certain oil, mostly probably because detoxification happens too fast, and it just makes the brain a little too irritable. So we want to do some healing with seizures before we go into nut and seed oils. So those ones are not a flat out for everyone, but it is often a good one, and it's a good one to explore, especially if you have pain or significant like brain deficit, like your brain's really not working, then those are when we want to do. Probiotic supplement at the beginning can be really helpful when you're just doing juice. However, juice from a ferment, as long as you are able to tolerate plants, which not all people can right away if you have pretty severe intestinal like diarrhea, but most people can tolerate like some juice from a ferment. It's incredibly densely packed with probiotics, so you definitely can drink enough juice, even a variety of juices, to be without a probiotic supplement. But again, it is a nice, easy, convenient way to do GAPS with a probiotic supplement. So that can be helpful. BioCult, B-I-O, type it here, B-I-O-KULT, original only, is the formulation that Dr. Natasha made for the GAPS diet. So one I use the most, it's very strong. We start with 1/4 or 1/8 of a capsule per day for first week at least, and then very slowly start increasing. There are other formulations BioCult has done, but they are not all GAPS approved. So I only recommend the original, even for babies. I have babies on it. You just start with way, way less than a capsule. So, all right. So those are supplements. Now there are other supplements, and let's talk about what we don't do for supplements. So we do not do synthetic supplements, period. Here is the way that you know if it's a synthetic supplement or not. I was told this metaphor, and it's perfect. When you have a watch, like an old-fashioned complicated watch, right? What makes it a watch? It's all the pieces and all of the pieces put together in a certain way, right? So you can have all the pieces of a watch in a box, and it's not a watch. It's not going to work like a watch. You can take a watch that was working and smash it with a hammer, and it's not a watch anymore. So what we want to do is make sure that our watch is still a watch. So when you look at vitamin A or D or C or F or whatever it is, we want to make sure it's in the same form that it was put together in, the form it was in nature, right? It was put together in. When you look at some companies that start with a whole food, but then they change it enough. They've extracted some things, or they've put some things in, extract from, anything time you see that kind of thing, they've damaged the watch. So it's not a real vitamin that our body is going to use properly and well, or even recognize in any extent. So if the watch has been broken, I do not count it as a watch. I do not count it as nutrition anymore. If the watch are components, so they chemically, they did this with ascorbic acid. They chemically analyzed vitamin C. In their lesser knowledge earlier on, they found out that vitamin C, they see ascorbic acid, which is, by the way, just the coat of vitamin C to protect it from hydrochloric acid to get through the stomach to the rest of the body. But when they analyzed it, they went, oh, ascorbic acid, we can make that. And so they make ascorbic acid in the lab, but it's missing everything inside the shell. So you actually aren't taking vitamin C when you take ascorbic acid. It's just the shell, it's just the pieces of a watch, but it is not put together as a watch. Now the body can take ascorbic acid and put it with other things and make it, but that's not really giving the body the full nutrition that it needs. And in general, the body does not need ascorbic acid. There's some benefit to acidify our bodies, which is why some people feel good after taking like an emergency packet, but because acidity helps our immune system work, but it's not because you're getting vitamin C. Okay. Someone asked a question about probiotic. Is it just the Biocult? I work with Gut Pro from Corganics also. And then I worked with Life Start by Natrin for babies under 2. If they don't have severe symptoms. Again, Biocult's fine for everyone. There are some other ones. Thrive probiotics, some GAPS practitioners really like and use. I've not used them significantly. I've not used them at all. The main goal for me for probiotic is get a whole bunch of soldiers into the fight so that the bad guys will have soldiers to fight with and your own flora can do other jobs. Because most probiotics that we take are going to get used up within 24 hours. Like they're going to bind to toxins in your body. They're going to calm down allergens. They're going to help maybe do a little repair. They're going to fight with interact with bad flora and both die. Those are good things, right? Those are helpful, but we don't really look at, a lot of probiotic companies say, well, ours is the only one that takes residence in the body, and that's why you should choose ours. My use for probiotics would be not to take I know it's not going to take residence probably, but it still can do a lot of work and take load off of my resident flora that I'm trying to build and be strong. Does that make sense? There are other probiotics. This person's asking again, there are other probiotics. I think there are other good ones, but there are not any I know. So you just have to look at, what is it? Is it doing the job? Are they lactobacillus and bifidobacteria strains? Some soil strains are good. So there's one that Weston A. Price recommends. It's black powder. I haven't used that one in a while. Nope, I can't think of what it is. So there are some soil strains, but keep in mind, people who put in, I have 100 or 52, strains of probiotic. Most of those aren't actually very helpful to our body. They're just playing on the Americans, like more is better. Mostly we need bifido and lactobacillus, unless you've done a specific lab test, gut test that that you're severely deficient in a certain probiotic type, then maybe you would want to seek out those strains. But in general, doing fermented foods and taking a basic probiotic is good. What we do not want is a prebiotic. So I do not recommend, I was going to say allow, but that's very strong. People can do what they want, but I do not recommend a prebiotic because prebiotic is starch. Number one, if you eat vegetables, you're eating prebiotics. Number two, if we have too many bad bacteria and we feed them prebiotic food, they're just going to get stronger, which is not the point. We know in GAPS that we are going to have a slight dip of probiotics. We're going to have a slight dip in our flora, which is what we're doing. We're cutting the grass really short, or we're plowing the field, or whatever metaphor you want to do, so then we can plant a good crop. So prebiotics are not allowed on GAPS intro, and really not on GAPS full GAPS, because again, you get it in the foods. If you're eating raw vegetables, you're eating probiotics. Lactic acid yeast from Standard Process, and Zymex. Zymex seems to be better. This is from Standard Process. They do put prebiotics in, and lactic acid yeast has quite a bit of prebiotics, which again can be really fine for people who don't have a significant amount of gut microbiome changing to do. So it really depends on the personal thing. So I do use lactic acid yeast, but generally not on GAPS. Maybe one person I have. So when we really go to full strong, exclusive GAPS, the lactic acid yeast is too sweet. It is sweet. You can taste the corn in it. and that is not legal for GAPS, so it's not the GAPS legal supplement. Okay. Dimex seems to be better. But I prefer not to use those. Other standard processing, since we're on that, they are good food. They just press and dehydrate and whatever food. However, they are complicated. And so I do not generally recommend standard processed things except on a case-by-case basis, depending on your gut symptoms and how really bad you need that nutrient. But I really do prefer to get the rest of the supplementation with food. Liver may have been that other supplement I was trying to think of. It is important that we eat liver. It's becoming more and more vital that we eat liver in our world because of the B vitamins, the A vitamins, the minerals, iodine, the iron, the zinc. Liver is so full of nutrients. If you cannot find good liver or will not eat good liver, you can eat desiccated liver, which is dehydrated raw liver in capsules that a couple companies sell. So Vital Proteins and Ancestral Supplements are the two companies that I have found and know are good. I think there are other good grass-fed ones I'm sure that you can find here and there, but those are the two most popular, easy to find. Ancestral Supplements and Vital Proteins. Vital Proteins is also known for selling collagen. I do not specifically recommend a collagen supplement if people are going to do GAPS, which includes meat stock, because meat stock is a much better collagen. Now, Vital Proteins does have they have good practices. They do not high heat their collagen or their gelatin, so they are safe. But it is better to be doing stock because you're going to get more and different nutrients that are more helpful for gut healing than if you're doing a collagen on its own. So that is my thought on that. All right, I also work a lot with PMGs or Proto Morphogens, and these ones they are GAPS legal because they are just, besides a little calcium stearate, which helps the pipes not clog, they are just organ meats. So specifically the nucleus of organ meats. So if we have an autoimmune issue, even a subclinical one, that we suspect or are really not able to kind of get past something, then the PMGs or Proto Morphogens are good to do. And those are totally GAPS legal. So that's the other thing that I may add sometimes. All right, that's all I can think of for supplements. When we get back to food, there may be other things, but those are kind of the things. And what they are concentrated, nutrient-dense foods. Also things like sardines, anchovies, caviar. You could really consider these supplements because they are so incredibly dense in their nutrition. So those are all great things to also consider adding into your diet. You can get little frozen, like freeze-dried, dried, dehydrated anchovies and little tiny fishes that are really salty. The Radiant Life catalog website that is with Weston A. Price, they have some because, and those are nice. You can sprinkle, they're so tiny little fish. You just sprinkle them on salad and it's kind of just like eating salad with salt on it. It really is not, those are not a big deal. So there's different options like that you can do. Anything that's power packed like that, it's going to give you so much nutrition. And in the time right now that we are in, where we have to be a little creative, who knows what, we're an interesting type of food chain issue. And those things that are so dense are going to be things that are giving you so much nutrition for your bang for your buck, right? That it is really important to do those all the time. But right now, I don't know, it's just easier for me to wrap my brain around, oh, I have liver. I should probably make some liver because that is going to give me so much more nutrition than eating some chicken breasts or something like that. So, all right, supplements. 2, detox. Detoxification is so important because you already have too many toxins in your body when you're a GAPster, right? We already talked about that. Over half of the symptoms that come out of having a leaky gut are toxic symptoms. So our liver's already overwhelmed, our lungs are already overwhelmed, our kidneys are overwhelmed, often our bladders are irritated, and our intestines, we may have loose stools, which is just the body keeps trying to flush the toxins out. The skin is trying to take as much of a load, and it's got rashes and dry skin and eczema, right? So detoxing is so incredibly helpful for us. I recommend doing things called gentle detox methods. Detox baths with like Epsom salt, apple cider vinegar, baking soda. Number 2, oil pulling, which we already talked about. And when we have question time at the end, if you have questions about oil pulling, I can explain it more, but I'm just going to assume you guys can probably know what it is. Number 3 is juicing, fresh pressed juices that you juice at home or you go to a place that they juice in front of you. Organic only, because we're doing this to not have toxins. So even if you buy other vegetables that are not organic, you need to juice organic. Number 4, sunbathing and grounding. So these are gentle detox methods. Foot baths count as detox baths. So you go half a cup to a cup of the different things, one or the other. So Epsom salt a few nights, and then apple cider vinegar a few nights, and then baking soda a few nights. Once you know how your body reacts, just kind of ask your body, what do we want to put in the bath tonight? Or ask your kids, what do we want in the bath tonight? And just trust that your body asks for the thing that will be most helpful at that point of detoxification. Baking soda seems to be really helpful in things like molds, and like people have a lot of mold toxins, or they're detoxing from chlorine, like a heavy swimmer who started having thyroid issues because of the chlorine toxicity. So apple cider or baking soda tends to be good for that. Apple cider vinegar can be great to replenish the acidic barrier on your skin, so that can be really helpful with eczema, even though that's counterintuitive. Epsom salts also can be helpful. So again, just figure out what's good for you. For me, I rotate between apple cider vinegar and Epsom salt. I'm mostly Epsom salt right now. I think I just need, my magnesium need is a little higher, but maybe once or twice a week, I want the apple cider vinegar. Frequency, nightly would be good. If that doesn't work, we're going to talk about prioritizing in a second. So nightly is good if you have a dechlorinated water. It's very easy to get a dechlorinator. Get on Amazon, some health food stores will carry them. It is something you just swish in the bath while it's filling in for a couple minutes. It retracts the chlorine, so the chlorine is not getting absorbed into your body. If you don't dechlorinate, I probably would recommend a bath only 2 or 3 times a week at the most, because it's going to dry your skin out. You're going to add more toxicity to you than you are getting out from doing the bath. So I highly recommend a dechlorinator. It's like $25, and one lasts me 9 months usually, with taking almost nightly baths. So it really is worth it. How much, again, do you add to a bath? Half a cup to a cup is a good amount. In general, if you're doing kiddos with less water, you might go maybe 1/4 cup. Sink baths would be 1/4 cup. And then for foot baths, I would recommend the same amount, maybe like half a cup or a little more, because you have tons of huge pores on the bottoms of your feet. So that's why foot baths are so effective. But you want to really ionize that water, especially Epsom salts. Apple cider vinegar works too. You want to get that water really dense in the detoxification factors, agents, that's what they're called, the agents, so that, with Epsom salt, you're going to pull toxins out of your body because it's going to try to neutralize the osmotic quality. And then for apple cider vinegar, those are going to get absorbed in and help pull toxins out. So same with baking soda. I just don't use baking soda. So if I forget to say baking soda, if it works and your body likes it, definitely do it. I just don't think of it because my body is not a super huge fan. Like, it's not really helpful. It's kind of drying, that kind of stuff. Okay, 20 to 30 minutes is the goal for a detox bath. Once you're cleaner, you can sit longer if you want to. But if you start getting a racing heart, rapid breathing, flushing skin, really hot, then your cells are starting to dump more toxins, and that's not what we're going for with this. So 20 minutes is often pretty safe. The water can be warm, comfortable. You don't have to be chilly, but you don't really want it like scalding. So a little over 100 degrees probably is about a good temperature, or a little under. So you're not really as hot as a hot tub. You want to be a little bit, be able to sit in there without sweating. So if you go too hot, too long, or too much stuff, you're going to initiate cellular detox, which means, let me back up. What we want to do with gentle detox is the things that are already floating in your bloodstream that are causing symptoms. We want those to go through the skin and get out of the equation. When you detox too much, not only are you clearing out your circulating toxins, but you also have the cells dump toxins into circulation, so you actually increase. So that's where the racing heart, you might get a little headache or a little nauseous or flushed. Your cells just detoxed into the bloodstream. It's what we ultimately want, but it's a pretty intense reaction, and if your liver's still behind, it's not actually going to be helpful. You're just going to be miserable. So we want to slowly detox what's in circulation, and then the body will slowly put more into circulation, and we will just slowly cleanse the body without really having a huge effect. Now, if you are out of work or you have cancer and we have to get toxins out fast, yes, definitely dump toxins, and we're going to do everything that we can. But that's not what we're talking about. Okay. Sorry, you guys should see my puppy. He's adorable. So with the cellular detox, so gentle detoxing, when I say gentle detoxing, I mean clean out what's in the bloodstream, not what's in the cells directly, right? It'll get there, but we're not going for that. Okay, detox baths. Questions? Any more questions people want to type about that? Nightly is good. If I'm sick, I'll take 2 or 3 or 4 in a day, because I'll feel better for about 2 hours and then I get worse again. So it's just a great way to use. I've got one mom right now. She's like, I think her 18-month-old takes 2 a day, because it's just significantly helpful for him. And when it's important and helpful, it becomes a priority, because 20 minutes to be clear for 4 hours versus muddling around in your day for 8 hours because you're only doing it once a night is clearly worth the time exchange, right? So it's like when you just decide sometimes you just need to take a nap because otherwise you're not functional, and you just take 30 minutes to take a nap and it makes the rest of your day productive. It's that kind of idea. Okay, that's detox baths. Oil pulling, you want to put oil in your mouth, teaspoon or so. Work on getting to 20 to 30 minutes, but you may only be able to start with 5, and that's okay. So start with what you have, work up. That is going to pull toxins out of your mouth. I also have a theory that it's pulling toxins that your parotid gland is pulling out of your bloodstream, because parotid gland puts things into the saliva. So I think that the parotid gland probably is also detoxing central circulation. But anytime you have stuffy sinus stuff, wake up with a sore throat, have a sore throat from die-off, because that's a pretty common die-off symptom. Anything like that, if you oil pull, when I get a sore throat from something, if I oil pull, usually it's gone. And it'll stay away for quite a few hours. Not sick, right? That's a whole different thing, but from like just that little irritation from toxins. You can use coconut oil, you can use olive oil, and I think safflower oil or sunflower oil or something like that was actually the original. The Egyptians, I think, did this first. So any cold pressed oils, those are usually the 3 or 4 I see. It has to be a true pure oil. A lot of middlemen, so if oil goes from the farm through a middleman to a company, even if you trust the company and it's from a farm, the middleman quite potentially cut it with canola oil and didn't label it. That's when they test oils, that's often there. So you really do want to make sure you're getting an oil from a farm. And that's why I like coconut oil, because that one doesn't get cut with canola oil you can't really do that. So there's higher and lower qualities of coconut oil, but at least you're not getting canola oil in it. You want to put, so you put the oil in your mouth. You don't gargle it, but you can slosh it between your teeth, like, you know, get it between your teeth. That's a lot of work. So I'll do it like every minute or so. I usually remember and kind of like, but then I will just kind of leave it. You know, I'll leave it. I do usually when I'm reading, sometimes when I'm watching a show or something. So every like minute I'm like, oh yeah, and then I'll kind of slosh it again. But even just sitting there is going to allow it to go. It softens the plaque on your teeth. It moves the bacteria. And then I spit it into the trash can and then brush my teeth with just the leftover oil. And I've been doing that for years. I've not gained astronomical numbers of cavities. I don't think I've had any new cavities, actually. I've been doing oil pulling and not toothpaste for like 6.5 years now. So no new cavities that I'm aware of. And I used to get a lot of plaque buildup and things like that, and it doesn't happen anymore because you're moving that, you're soaking it. It's a really good way to do that. So oil pulling is great. Just use your things. If you want to whiten your teeth a little bit, you can use a little baking soda. My enamel I was a gapster from birth, so my nutritional status is not great, so my enamel never got super strong, so the baking soda is not great for me, but some people really like it. If you have a sensitivity to coconut oil or coconuts, I mean, if you're reacting to it currently, then I wouldn't use it. You can always try it depending on what your sensitivity is, because you're not really, I mean, you're going to swallow and absorb minuscule amounts, right? But you're not not eating it. So it really depends on what your reaction is. You can definitely do olive oil. Rocky Mountain Olive Oil Company in Old Town Fort Collins has a very beautiful selection of olive oils. Some are organic, some are not, but all of theirs they get directly from a farm that they know. So there's no middlemen in them. So even if you get a non-organic one, a lot of them just aren't certified organic. You can ask them. They're very knowledgeable. They know where their oils come from. So it's really great. So you can do that. Also, you may want to try different coconut oils because some are much more pure than others. So you may need to get the more pure one. And it may actually be a toxin or something else that you're reacting to with coconut. Again, it just depends on what your reaction is. So, but there are definitely other options that you can use besides coconut. Okay, so we oil pull maybe 5 minutes to start. Eventually we work up to 20 minutes. When that oil gets absolutely disgusting and you're like, I have to spit this out, you've probably dumped a lot of toxins into it and your body's telling you to do something. So go ahead and listen and spit it out, brush your teeth, and you're good for the day. As you oil pull longer, that reaction won't happen because you're less toxic and you will be able to be longer, have it longer in your mouth. There's no really upper limit. I mean, there's times I get to reading or I'm in the bath. I have to oil pull in the bath at night, and it's been an hour and I just have had the oil in there. So there's really no problem with an upper limit, but you want to try to get to 20 minutes for the lower limit. Okay, oil pulling, detox baths. 3, sunbathing and grounding for grounding. So sunbathing. If I ask you, you don't have to answer, but answer to yourself. Does being in the sun make you feel better or worse? Because sun causes us to detoxify. Some people, that detoxification is beautiful, and if they can spend an hour or 2 in the sun, they are like rock star, great to go. Some people, like myself, the sun detoxifies me in a certain toxins or way so strongly that if I go more than 10 or 15 minutes, especially when it's new sun, then I get sick. I'll get a headache or I'll be nauseous, kind of not have an appetite for the rest of the day. So for me, sunbathing is really important because it's clearly moving toxins, but I have to limit the amount. For you, if sunbathing for 2 hours is amazing to your health and you are like leap and bounding forward in your health progress, that needs to be a priority in your life. However, it can be whenever it can be, even if it's a couple of days a week, right? So all these things, you want to see what your body responds to and do it. Grounding is good for everyone. That is touching the ground through only natural materials. So you can ground not in your bare feet. It's snowing right now, right? It snowed right now, so it's kind of cold. I have grounded in the snow before. It can last about a minute. But you also can, I mean, right now just shovel a place on your grass and it'll be warm in a day, you know, and you can stand on it. Also concrete. Concrete is made of rock and sand, so that's going to be something that is going to be some natural materials, but it's not as good of a conductor as like grass, especially wet grass or wet sand are the best conductors. You could be on wood, right? A wood that's not treated as a natural fiber, and so that's going to be there. Now, what about yourself? So if you're wearing shoes with rubber, not real rubber, but you know, synthetic stuff, you're not on a natural fiber, so you can't ground. But if you ground, there's grounding shoes that have metal studs that will touch the ground because metal is a natural thing. You can buy, like, if you have moccasins that are actual, you know, rawhide material, those you could ground in. You could ground in pure wool socks, right? Because that's a natural fiber, or pure cotton socks. So it's great to be barefoot, but if it's really cold, there are some other options that you can, or if you're worried about, if you don't have a safe place to be on the ground, just because of glass or something else, then you can do it through a natural fiber as well. Same with, you know, if you're sitting on the ground, if you're hugging a tree, that's something I'll do in the winter sometimes. If I really need to ground and it's just too cold, I will go lean up against a tree and put, you know, my face and my hands on, so at least some of my bare skin is touching something that's connecting to nature. Why is grounding so helpful? It helps to regulate the ions, the positive, negative charges in our body, which affect our cell health. So our cells are going to be able to detox better if you're able to rebalance your charge with the earth, which has the charge that we should be also. Also petting pets. My dog that's laying all over my lap right now. Pets are grounding every time that they're outside, right? So touching your pet, you are going to get some grounding. That's one of the reasons why we feel so good when we're touching and petting our animals, is because we're actually grounding from them, and they are so kind in grounding us. You know, they'll go back outside and re-ground. My dog spends quite a bit of time outside at night before bed. It's just one of the things he doesn't really spend a lot of time other times, but at night he just needs to sniff around the whole time, and I think he's grounding that time to be ready for being able to sleep well overnight. When there's a lot of wind or there's a lot of electricity around you, we're going like in hotels or in maybe your office, or a lot of wind in the air, that messes with our polarity and will pull us to the wrong charge. So that's especially when it's important to ground. I found when the high pressure, the pressure changes with the storm coming in, if I can get out on the ground, especially in something wet or when it starts raining, my headache that I had gotten will instantly go away or really improve, because I've reestablished the charge that got messed up from the change that was happening, even naturally. It's not just electronics. Natural phenomenon does it as well. So grounding is really helpful. It helps our cells be in a place where they can detox, and helps our organs electrically work properly. So that's why grounding is so good for us. So sunbathing, grounding, oil pulling, detox baths. I recommend doing, especially the one that's so good for you, every day. So for me, detox baths are awesome, and oil pulling is great. So those two I do every day. And then I try to ground for at least a minute, because that's actually really helpful. I'm excited for summer for it to be, you have to be less brave to go ground when it's not snowing outside. So juicing is the last one. Juicing is a natural way to detox heavy metals and other toxins. And when you drink that freshly pressed juice, it gets absorbed in, goes to your cell, kind of like knocks on the door, asks for the toxins, and shuttles them out. So it's a very gentle way to detox. You still can get a detox reaction, so I recommend you start with like a carrot, and then work your way up to about a cup once a day in the morning on an empty stomach is the best time to juice. So that is going to be good. So you can juice, and then you could oil pull in your first 30 minutes of your day, and you are well set to really having cleansed a lot in your morning. Therapeutic ingredients you'll see in the GAPS book, that means vegetables. And the non-therapeutic are fruit. So you want to be at least 50% therapeutic or vegetable things. I do not recommend spinach or kale raw because it can it's really hard for your thyroid to manage those. So those are great cooked, but they are not things I recommend adding to juicing. But you could do lettuce, you could do parsley, a little cilantro. Careful with herbs because they pull heavy metals faster and you may not be able to handle that. So that's kind of that section. All right, I've been talking for like an hour and 12 minutes without hearing anyone. So you guys are giving great feedback, but I just want to check in and see. So that's all but the GAPS diet. So my plan, and then I want to kind of open up and just see where you guys are at. If one or two people can just, respond for a second, it will help me out. But so we talked about why leaky gut. What symptoms do we see? Why is it happening, which we didn't talk about, but it's toxins are damaging our flora, our medications are damaging our flora, our food that we're eating is damaging our flora, the water we drink, the air we breathe, like we just are in a lot. And then we stopped eating traditional foods, because we refrigerate things now, right? So most people in human history ate a ton of fermented foods because how else did you store it? Also, they ate meat that was slightly, they just left meat out, right? So there was some different growth on the meat that all of that added up. The water had stuff in it. We didn't, purify and kill and then add chemicals to our water, which is what we drink now. So they had most of human history was a very different experience in the probiotic exposure world than we have now. So we have to on purpose give probiotics in. We have more toxins to deal with. And we also, our foods just aren't as dense nutritionally. So all of that takes a hit on our bodies. So we have to on purpose do things otherwise, which we're coming back to. We're understanding that there's a lot of movement, even the homesteading movement, right? Even people who aren't, I follow the Prairie Homesteader, which I highly recommend. She has this thing that she really thought through, and she calls it old fashioned on purpose. She has a podcast, but the Prairie Homesteader, Jill Wagner is her name. What she really one day came to this conclusion, which was she eloquently explained, was we're being old fashioned on purpose, not because we want to be preppers or away from the grid or anything like that, but because we realize our modern world is not giving us health and we want to do things the way we used to do them because those things gave us health. Not everything, right? But in general, we knew how to have health better naturally just because it was the only option. So a lot of our modern advances have really challenged our body's ability to get nutrition, to detoxify the amount that comes in. So we are behind. So we have to be old fashioned on purpose. We have to do these things on purpose. And if that doesn't work, if we're not doing that, we're gonna have different results. Our health is not gonna be the same place. Okay. Deb, I see your question about what does a typical day look like, and I want to talk about the food here. That would be another 10 minutes, but just want to does all that make sense? Why we got into a leaky gut, that we have leaky guts, here's the symptoms. Here are kind of the other two categories, which often don't get talked about, and then I want to talk about GAPS diet itself. All making sense? At least give me a thumbs up if your picture is there. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Let's talk about food then. The GAPS diet is broken into two major groupings, the introduction diet and the full GAPS diet. Bentonite clay, ginger, grated ginger, and seaweed powder can be in a detox bath, but they tend to be stronger. So I don't do them in the beginning, but once you kind of know your body and have experimented with some things, or you're really sick, bentonite clay can be helpful. So yes, you can do them, but they are much stronger of an effect. So just be very cautious. Okay, food. Let's go to food. Introduction diet and full GAPS. I'm going to talk about full GAPS first because it is the overall of what we eat and don't eat on GAPS. The introduction diet are 6 stages. that you have basically a temporary elimination diet of more digestible, easily absorbable, and nutrient-dense foods, and then you progress to adding other foods like fruit, which gives you less nutrition and is harder to digest. So we do this rainbow of progression as we heal through them to get to full gaps. Full gaps can be started with also. There's absolutely nothing wrong with starting with full gaps. If you are used to a standard American diet, it's a huge transition to go to stage 1, which is soup. Just soup. So homemade soup. So if you are not used to a lot of things, you have no probiotic experience or fermented food experience, right? It's a huge jump for your body to take. You're gonna have a lot of symptoms. It's gonna be uncomfortable, and you may not know how to cook. It may just be an overwhelming experience. So totally fine to start on full gaps and then go to introduction later, or repeat introduction later. The introduction is really introducing foods in a certain order, and it's a more dense healing time. That's all it is. So introduction is introducing foods in a certain order, and it's a more dense healing time. So let's talk about full gaps. Full gaps, what we eat and don't eat. We eat any real food, any fruit, any vegetable, any meat, any seafood, any fat, any real food in nature. Except grains, not greens, but grains, starches, and sugar. We eat honey and fruit, that's it. We don't eat disaccharide sugars, which includes maple syrup. It is a natural food, but it's too complicated for what situation is going on with your gut. So we eat fruit, we eat honey. We don't eat potatoes or like turnips, I think. It's either turnips or parsnips. I can't ever remember one of those. We don't eat grains because those things are starch and they feed whatever flora is there, right? We're back to that discussion. So in general, we want to not feed the flora strongly. We want to push up the immune system and clean out toxins and support flora that will be able to survive on meat and vegetables, and then just change the environment of our body so that good flora will want to live there and bad flora will not want to live there. So we temporarily decrease the prebiotics, which are indigestible fibers and starches and things like that, because we need to change over the environment of our body. So no grains, no starches, no potatoes, no processed food, obviously, no sugar except honey and fruit. Does that make sense why we take those out? Otherwise, we're eating foods. You can eat lots of vegetables. This is not a keto diet. It can be, but it is not inherently a keto diet, because you can have fruit, you can have a lot of vegetables, you can have any vegetables. You can have, well, those are the two main, honey, right? So those are where you're getting your carbohydrates. So we can have plenty of carbohydrates. We have plenty of meat. We make meat stock, and we eat a lot of animal fat and fermented foods. There are 3 pillars of gaps: fermented foods, which we talked about, animal fat, which we'll talk about, and meat stock. The reason we do meat stock, which is different than bone broth is a long cooking time is mostly bones. The purpose of bone broth is minerals, but the problem with bone broth when you have a leaky gut is there's high glutamic acid, which comes right in through here and irritates nerve, so you get more pain, headaches, brain fog. Kids who do gaps wrong and their moms make meat stock or bone broth, they were having increased number of seizures, for example, or increased number of stimming behaviors in autism. All of that is because the glutamic acid is a neuroirritant. It's fine when it comes in and is broken down properly or used properly, but when you have a leaky gut, there's nothing to block it, and it just goes in and irritates. So we avoid bone broth until our gut is not leaky anymore. Meat stock is a short cooking time. It's 80% meat, 20% bone. So it's mostly meat. So like a whole chicken, or like a pound or 2 of stew meat with some short ribs, or a couple lamb shanks, things like that. bone-in pork chops, 4 bone-in pork chops, things like that are what we make stock from. We cook it between 2 and 6 hours generally, depending on the size of the animal that you're using the meat and bones from. You want to bone with a joint to get the collagen. So we're getting collagen and we're pulling the amino acids from the meat into the water so that those amino acids are just ready. It's like taking an amino acid supplement or taking a protein powder shake, right? Except it's real food. And it just brings it in for your body to use. So great, so healing. And often a lot of what needs healed is our gut lining. So you're giving amino acids right to the place where it needs it. So when we start GAPS and we start drinking stock, many people find a reduction in intestinal symptoms within 5 days to a week because it's so healing and so quickly healing. So it's really helpful. All right, we always do meat stock. Even on full GAPS, you still want to get around 5 cups of meat stock a day. 5 to 8 is the goal for an adult, a little less for kids. Number 2, we want to do animal fat. I recommend at least half a cup of added animal fat a day. So that's butter, ghee, sour cream. If you're not doing dairy, it's okay. You can do lard, tallow. Runny egg yolks count as fat. You know, really fatty cuts of meat by 80%. Hamburger, get fatty fish, all that kind of just everything. Get the fattiest option you have and put more fat on it. Half a cup of added animal fat a day is the minimum. You want to increase that as your body needs it. If you are pregnant or nursing, or you have brain issues or hormone issues or immune issues, you probably will need more fat. Stress, I eat at least half a cup, probably closer to a cup most days, because just the stress of running a job, my brain won't remember things if I don't eat enough fat. Some of you guys may have been with me on a day that my brain was a little low and I can't even hardly speak English. My sentences are hard, I can't remember words, and that happens after I got sick or, you know, things like that where there's a really tax on my cholesterol. We need so much fat. When we don't have fat, we have what's it called? Cholesterol deficiency symptoms, which most people have. This is hormonal imbalances, brain fog, memory issues, dry skin, and constipation, immune suppression, hormone imbalances, I think I already said, stress, low stress tolerance. Those are all symptoms of fat deficiency. So it's very important for us to eat fat. We need it for really important things in our body. Half a cup of added animal fat per day at least, 5 cups minimum of meat stock per day at least, and then we want to have a fermented food with every meal. Now, you may have too much die-off if you go to half a cup, right? So most people are going to start with a tablespoon or less of a fermented food per meal, just a bite or two, but you do want to work up to having quite a bit of ferments or cultured dairy. You want vegetable and dairy, if you can tolerate dairy, in a day, right? And so you can do those in between, like I do sour cream with a little honey for a nice afternoon snack if I need to pick me up. I'll do, you know, sauerkraut a lot. There's vegetable medley. There's beet kvass. So those are all the ways. Okay, back to fat. Not a silly question. It's a great question. How do we eat it? Different ways. So you can eat sour cream like I just said, or, you know, if I want some carrots, I'll dip them in sour cream. Everything I eat, I think, how can I add fat to this? You can put it in your soup. So you can add a little teaspoon of lard into your soup every bowl that you eat. You can roast vegetables. It's amazing how much fat vegetables will absorb when you cook them together. So for me, I don't love a fat layer in my soup if it's a stock. If it's a soup, I don't mind the extra fat because you can just mix it kind of as you're eating it in a bowl. If I'm sipping stock, that's a little much for me, so I would prefer to just eat. I see you can't do dairy, but when we can, which I couldn't, part of GAPS is healing, I could not touch. I reacted to ghee for a couple weeks when I first started GAPS. So I hear you, and I now can drink raw milk. So you can heal because, again, a leaky gut brings food allergies, but you have to start without, and that's okay. It's harder to get it, but you can get it. So lard and tallow are your 2 things. Most people can tolerate ghee. And a surprising number of people can tolerate a good grass-fed butter, but definitely ghee is almost always tolerated. You may have to do a little healing first. So you can put some in your soup, you cook your meat in it, you can put some on top of your meat. Again, get the fattiest cuts of steak that you can get, 40, 80% hamburger. You can use lard or butter, but lard to fry up your hamburger. Or make meatballs. You can cut, if you have tallow, you can cut the tallow up actually and mix it into your balls of, like if you're making sausage or meatballs, you can mix it in, which will actually make the ball lighter because the fat will melt out from it, but then you can pour the sauce over it. You can pour that after sauce over the vegetables that you're eating. For a lot of years, especially when I was dairy free, because animal fat cold is a little bit gross. Butter is fine, like I can eat butter and just bite it, right? But you can't really just eat a spoon of lard. Though I have some people that love it and they do. But I licked my plate for a long time because I was not going to waste any of that fat. So after I ate my food, whatever was left on my plate, I just licked it off. Now my dog gets it too, so that's good. So all of that is good. When you can get, like I butter my steak, I make sure to eat that huge fatty chunk off of it. There's no fat that goes to waste in my house. And then eggs, you can put a few tablespoons of fat in a couple eggs usually if you scramble them. So there's just lots, those types of ways, just try to add it in. If you guys, people have more suggestions, go ahead and put it in the comments. Getting close to 11:30, I'm fine to keep going if everyone is. If you have to drop off, great. I will post, somehow I'll post this, or like you can email the office for it if you want to re-watch it. I don't know, this is all new, right? So I don't know how I'm going to share this, but somehow we will share this video and you can watch it again. So, or watch the end if you can't, if you have to go. But I'm going to keep going for a little bit. Okay, meat stock, animal fat, fermented food. So work up on your fermented foods, work up on your variety. Every time you do a new fermented food, go slow, because just because you're doing beet kvass doesn't mean you can tolerate sauerkraut, because sauerkraut has different probiotics on it than beet kvass does. So your beet kvass may get along with everything in you, but the sauerkraut may have a really fight to pick with a particular thing in you, and then you get a lot of die-off. Die-off is when the good and bad bacteria fight, and the bad bacteria dies, and it explodes. So there's things for cell death there's things from cell death, cytokines that get released that cause pain and inflammation, and then there's also the toxin that bacteria was leaking out. All of the toxin that was stored also leaks out as well. So we get a temporary increase of symptoms with die-off, either generic like runny nose, and thank you. Glad to have all of you guys there. So I didn't quite get through it in time, but hopefully you can watch the end of it later. So, fermented foods. Oh, die-off. So a temporary increase in the symptoms. It's good. It means we're attacking bad stuff, but you can go slow so that you're not miserable, because misery doesn't help anybody. Your body's not handling it, so it's not good. Okay, going back to animal foods. What if they make you feel heavy, gaggy, and gross? Your bile is probably too thick, or your enzymes aren't working well. So you can do things to boost your hydrochloric acid, like, before everyone goes, on the 4th, we haven't announced it yet, but the first Saturday, hold on, we're going to have another class about gaps. And the class is going to be, find my calendar here. It might be the first Tuesday. I have it on my calendar at work. We are doing, it's either a Tuesday at 6:30 or Saturday, and I'm really sorry that I don't remember. I thought it was in my phone, but it's not. So we are going to do, like, how do you practically do this? Kind of a brainstorming time. So come with your questions, come with like, here's what my family is, here's the issues I'm seeing, or, you know, we tried this, or I've never made a chicken before, and we're going to come up with plans for people to figure out. We're going to probably do some breakout. It was going to be a lot cooler when we were in person, but whatever. We'll see what happens in 2 weeks. It's a little bit away, but the idea is do some breakout to figure out, here's the questions to go through, to think through, what solutions, what problems can we solve, and let's figure out how to get you on a pathway inclusive of when do you start. Like, some people are starting GAPS right now because they're like, I'm stuck at home and I got a freezer full of meat, so let's do this. Other people are going to, you know, starting in the summer is good, or starting in the fall, depending on what their kids are doing and where they have vacations going on and all that. So anyway, so really want to work on figuring out planning if you want to take steps forward. The other thing I want to say before people maybe have to drop off is, when you do one good thing for your body, it makes a difference. If you just add a mug of meat stock every day, you are going to start healing your gut. If you find one new ferment a month that you have added into your family's cycle, you are going to start healing your body. So it is not, GAPS itself by definition is exclusive, and that is where the powerhouse of healing comes. But all the principles that are in GAPS are healing principles, and you will see some benefit when you do some of them. Now, you don't say GAPS didn't work for me, or it wasn't as good as it's supposed to be, if you're not actually doing GAPS, right? So I want to be clear about that. GAPS is exclusive, but you can take the beneficial things of GAPS, and some people, that's all you need to heal. If you start eating liver and meat stock once a day and fermented foods with your meals and do detox baths, that's a significant amount of help that you were not giving your body potentially before, right? So just to take courage in, it is great to practice. It is great to start doing little steps. Last February, actually, 2 Februarys ago, I did a one little step. You can see those videos on YouTube. I have 30 days of it's like a 1 to 5 minute thing for you to do for your health every day. And the goal of that is to go through, do one per day. So you can go, there's a whole playlist on YouTube. You can do one per day. And then the things that were like amazing for you and you just felt like a rock star after the 1 minute, well, do those. Keep doing those in your life. So really this is about, and my passion is helping us know the things that help our body so we can start putting them in as we can, the ones that are especially important. And then when you can, if you have leaky gut, do GAPS at some point. Take the 2 to 3 years now, because our world is getting sicker. It used to be 1.5 to 2 years, but it's much more 2 to 3 years for most people now. Take that time to actually heal and set up the rest of your life well, right? But until then, do little bits. Do what you can. Do one thing. If you eat liver capsules, you're gonna have more B vitamins, which makes like 100 things in your body work better. So just do what you can and just start working on it. All right. Animal foods and fat make you heavy and gross. We need to boost probiotics, boost your stomach acid, or boost enzymes, get your bile flowing. So beet kvass is the first thing I would start with. And maybe even you need to do a little beet kvass before every meal to get things going. You also could take like a hydrochloric acid or a enzyme. If your own body can't, even with help, like encouragement, even if your own body with encouragement can't make enough enzymes right now, we may need to take an enzyme to be able to have enough nutrition to make our own enzymes down the line. So sometimes you have to walk into that. So we can, if you're just so nauseous and you can't do GAPS because you can't do the stock, that's when we add an enzyme to get you to the place where your body's healed enough to do what it needs to do. Same with bile. Sometimes we need to take ox bile. Good enzyme to take. The one that is GAPS legal is from Houston Laboratory. And if you go to gapsdiet.com, there is a store. It's like online store, and then you go to digestive support, and there are digestive bitters, which can sometimes be all that you need. There's enzymes in capsules and enzymes in powder. Those ones are GAPS legal. That store is supported by those are things recommended by Dr. Natasha. It's run by a GAPS practitioner connected in the GAPS international world. So the Houston lab one. However, I have found that many enzymes are decent. You just don't want stuff in them, right? We don't want prebiotics. We don't want extra stuff. Just find a digestive enzyme. But so I find people either can just handle what they maybe have. doTERRA has an enzyme, Young Living has an enzyme, so that one's pretty complicated. I don't love that one. So just find an enzyme and see, or if you feel like I'm sensitive, I need to really do this well, then I would go with the Houston one. It is a bit pricey, but it's a lot, so it'll last you a long time. How long is beet kvass good in the fridge for? It should be super salty. Yes, that is what it is. It should thicken. It doesn't always thicken, but the thicker means it had a good bacterial growth. So thick beet kvass is good. That's when I feel like I really did have a strong batch. It's usually good in the fridge for 6 to 12 months. It starts tasting weird. If you've not opened it, it'll be good longer. Once you start using it, it'll go weird. I drank some that was weird and it didn't die. I didn't even feel sick, but I definitely threw it out. So if you drink it and you're like, I'll make a new batch. Beets are pretty cheap, so that's good. It does taste super salty. That is good for your adrenals. It's part of the benefit of beet kvass is giving the high amount of salt. If it's too much for you to do, you can dilute it with water for your dose, right? So you can pour out your ounce or 2 or whatever you're at, and then put some water in it and drink it that way. But it is good to be salty. Okay, beer kvass. I didn't even notice that was a typo. How do you make beer kvass, Candace? Sounds delicious. I need to make a ginger bug. I'm really excited about doing that because you can make ginger beer from that as a probiotic. I don't know if it's actually alcoholic, but they call it ginger beer. Okay. Food. So full gaps, intro. So intro briefly is soups. Then you add egg yolks. Then you add avocado and scrambled eggs or whole eggs. And then you add roasted vegetables and juice as stage 4. And then you add fresh vegetables like salad, which is stage 5, and fresh fruit, which is stage 6. There's more things too, but that's kind of the progression. So if you kind of just listen to that progression, you go from soups, which are highly digestible, highly nutritious, dense, and then you start adding things that are a little more hard, have the raw fiber, things that are not as dense and healing to the body, but are good and good foods and good for healthy bodies, but maybe not for sick bodies. If you read old literature, which I love reading old literature and picking out those little things about like Secret Garden. So Secret Garden, Mary was in India, was really hot and languid and had nothing to kind of stimulate her. So she was just pasty and pale and weak and couldn't, it talks about in the book, not the movie, but she couldn't really even, like a flight of stairs would make her short of breath as a little girl. So she just had no stamina at all. And then the things that they were told, the housekeepers instructed for her to eat are simple foods, which are mostly meat and vegetables and a little like porridge, things like that, but very basic foods. Well, those are foods for us when our bodies are not well. And then when we have strong bodies, so children generally ate very simple foods, even when the adults ate more rich foods is the term that they would use. And those would be cakes and, donuts and puddings and things like that. So it's just very interesting that they knew that a healthy growing body required simple foods. And when we are more well, we can have more complex foods. And that is essentially what we're following when we're following the introduction diet. And even GAPS in itself is simple foods. We don't even do potatoes. We don't even do grains, which in those days could be simple foods, but just with our world and what's happened to our floras, they are not. So in some ways GAPS is there compared to Weston A. Price, which has a much more rich variety because that is a well person diet. So when we look at that, historically, that's always been what we know is good for bodies are dense animal foods, meat stock, animal fat, and fermented foods are good. And then the other foods are lovely when we can do them. I enjoy rice. I enjoy potatoes now that I've healed. But they are yeah, in some amounts, right? I still eat a lot of GAPS foods because they're just really good. I need them for my stress, you know, to do the intense, I don't want to say stress, but the intense level that I ask my body and my mind to do, I have to eat really dense foods. So that's a weird way to end because that's not really GAPS, but I feel like that has covered kind of the things that I was thinking of covering. We never popped over to it was going to be too much work to pop over to the PowerPoints. So hopefully you guys were fine with that. And questions, other questions, things you wish I covered? You can type them or unmute yourself.
I do have a question. I was just wondering, is there a way that there could be, like, is there any opening in the schedule to be able to do a class that's just on the initial stages, or is there a resource that you have for that?
That is a great question. Right now, the resource that we're working on, well, there's two things. So I have 96% completed an online course of GAPS, which is very similar to if anyone here did the Getting Started on GAPS program. There are a lot of emails. So it's similar to that course. So we're working on an online course for that. I'm happy to do a GAPS introduction, just stages class. That would be fine. I feel like it was something I wanted to work in here, although it's fairly easy to look that up. But the other thing is, sorry, I'm answering in weird sentences. The other thing is I do have a GAPS call every Thursday at 12:30 Mountain Time. We do for 40 minutes, we do a call. So that is something that it's part of a support package if you are working with me already. Right now, however, just to support people, I am just going to leave it up to people. If you are able to pay for it, great. It's listed as $40 a month to jump on those calls. However, I'm just going to have that as just so you know that's what it costs. But if you just want to get on, that's fine. I'm really enjoying teaching for donation right now. That's really what I'm doing, like including today. So what we do on that is talk about different topics. Now, I don't necessarily go through like intro stages, but if someone's on and that's what they want, that's what their question is, then we would go through intro stages. So it's definitely something that we could do there. Also, we are working on my website. We're working on a stage-by-stage resource, with all the recipes that I have linked on the stage that it is and what is the stage and all those things. So that will be coming within the next month. Social media people just got in high demand. So I don't know if that's going to be something that my social media person will be able to spend the little bit extra time we've been working on it with or not, or my website person. But we will in the next month or so have that resource out as well. So I could schedule one and just an intro class. Those are some other options that are also currently or will currently be available as well.
Amy, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
I was curious about the Natasha's book talks about getting the marrow out of the bones. How do you do that with chicken bones? Like, how would you break them?
Yeah, generally you can crush them with the flat of a butcher knife once they're cooked. So after they're cooked, there's not as much and it's harder to do for sure. The other thing I will often do if I'm like with the bones that I eat, I will just crush them with my teeth also. Usually if you've cooked them 2 hours and they're not, now farm chicken bones, you have to make bone broth to make it soft enough to get the marrow. But if you get even the Mary's organic, sorry, let me say that a little longer. When I raised my own chickens and those chickens lived a while and ate a really nice diet, those bones were harder than beef bones. They were like rocks. That is not true of chickens, even good quality chickens that I buy now in the store, like Mary's Natural or Mary's Organic, partly because they don't live as long. A meat bird only lives about 12 to 14 weeks at the most. 8 to 14 weeks is how long it takes to grow a meat bird. By the way, all you people with backyards, they're inside for a month as chicks and they're outside for 6 weeks as meat birds. And you could just raise a batch of meat birds in your backyard because your neighbor will hardly know because they're only there for like a month and a half. Okay, I'll help you butcher them. It's great.
Oh my gosh, no, let's do that. I'm seriously want to do that. If you'll help me butcher them, because I never got to learn how to butcher them, but I wanted to. So
I would love to. It's such a great skill. Actually, with all of the food questionality that's happening right now, my first thought was not I need to go to the store. My first thought was I need to buy some chicks.
Oh my gosh, yeah, no, that's how I've been like, wow, how am I going to never use the grocery store again?
Right. So meat birds are awesome. It costs some money for feed. And I don't know I'm assuming feed is available. You can also feed them your own scraps. Like you can make it work. But yeah, it is. They're inside for about a month to 5 weeks, and then they're outside for 6 weeks, maybe depending on the breed. And then you just spend 4 or 5 hours to butcher them, have a couple friends over. I'm happy to teach how to do that. I've been doing it for years and years and years. It's so easy, and once you've done 3, you'll be an expert too. So it's really easy. It's really great. Okay, well we'll talk more. Okay, so chicken. Sorry, I got off on a tangent. Chicken bones. When you raise your own and you feed them dense foods with nutrients, their bones are a lot harder. The bones now, I can bite them with my molars after they've been cooked. So I just bite the end off of if they're soft enough. Don't break your teeth, right?
So like the cartilage, is that what you're talking about on the end?
No, after you get the cartilage off, then you can either crush the end or crush the whole bone or break it in half and then just kind of scrape it out. It's harder to get it from the chicken bones. I don't always do it.
Okay. Yeah. So you talk about eating the bones. Like I've heard of that before too. Like what does that even mean?
Yeah, I don't actually eat the bone. I just crush it with my teeth.
Marrow is what it means.
Yeah, I get the marrow.
Okay.
Yep. And then remember, if you can save your meat stock bones for bone broth later.
Yeah, that was my question, because you're not supposed to do that right away.
Right. But you can save it. So, chicken bones, if you've deboned a chicken, there's not very much. If you just literally take only the bones away, there is not very much bone volume. So you can do probably, 15 or 20 chicken bones in a gallon bag in your freezer. And then that's going to make a great stock. Add a chicken breast or a couple thighs or something to it, and that'll make a great bone broth later on. Okay. So you can have a lot of chickens before you're going to have your freezer's going to be full of bones, and then hopefully you're far enough along in gaps that you can make some bone broth, or even if you make bone broth for someone else, we can still use it even if we're not at the moment eating it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Other questions?
Do you, Amy, have any other butchers or places you recommend for, I know you don't need a whole lot of bones to make the meat stock, but just to get more cuts and stuff, I have my 1/6 of a cow in the freezer, but if I needed more, do you have places that you suggest?
Yeah, so Field to Front Door is something here in Northern Colorado. They are a little bit changing their structure, so things seem to be temporarily not as available.
Okay.
Also, Sylvandale Ranch and Sunrise Ranch in West Loveland, they both raise grass-fed cows.
Okay.
The other thing would be to, thank you. The other thing would be to type, are you typing the other one? See that? Perfect. Sunrise and Sylvandale is S-Y. Nope, I can't spell it out loud. Hopefully you know how to spell it. Otherwise I can. The other thing would be to contact people throw it out on Facebook, because some people have cows and they've gotten all of it, but they've never used the bones.
Right.
Also, the Weston A. Price Foundation, and maybe Bonnie, if you're able to type that, the Fort Collins website, because I always can't remember. Maybe you don't know what it is, but if someone knows the Weston A. Price Fort Collins chapter website login, that can be really helpful, because they are the ones that are connect. Now, I just saw Pig and Plow. I think it's pigandplow.com, but the Pig and the Plow, I think is what it is a basically Weston A. Price resource. Let's see, here I go. Just the pigandtheplow.com is what it is. And they really connect different, basically it's an online farmers market more or less, but they are also doing delivery right now and things like that because of the restrictions. So here's the pig in the plow. I'm not sure what they have. I just got an email from them yesterday that they were doing this online thing, so it's on my list to check into what it is, but I haven't gotten a chance to. So that's going to be a great resource as well. And again, once you start, just take action with who you know. And I'm one of the people you know, but that's what I know. So just start taking action, because often people in that world, once you start getting in the world of that, if they don't have it, they know another person who does. So just start calling or emailing people and see what you can find. And then the more resources we have, I have some bones. I have femur bones, so you still are going to need a joint bone. That's why short ribs can be so helpful, because that's usually a readily available cartilage thing, because cartilage between the ribs is a joint, right? So that's a very cartilage heavy cut of bone. So there's things like that. There are definitely like small farmers that may just have more bones than they want, and they'd be happy. Even if you just know someone who gets a cow, again, they may just have more bones than they need, because there's a lot of bones if you get all of them from your animal. So yeah, great questions. So if you're not already on our webs or here's the plan. We are going to put Zoom links for the classes that are coming up, or potentially we're going to do a YouTube live maybe. I have to figure out if that's going to work for the autoimmunity class on the 31st. But we are going to put a Zoom link on to the event section of our website. So you'll get them in the email, you'll get them in the newsletter, but also if you can't find them, go to our website, bewellclinic.net/events, and find the event, and you'll have the link to come to the class there. So that would be the most consistent way that you won't miss it. We are going to do classes every Tuesday night still. They just will be online if they need to be. And yeah, and from there, the plan so it's donation-based classes, which means they really are free. If you feel like this is helpful and you're in a place where you can donate some so that we can keep teaching classes, then if you can just mail us a check or call the office and we can charge a card, or hopefully, we didn't have time to do this, but hopefully I think there are going to be a donate button. You can check out with a donation. It's not tax deductible. We're not tax deductible, but something that you can just pick an amount and pay us something if you want to for a class or some other information or resource that you got from us and you just want to help out. So I think that's just going to be under shop, or we'll have buttons linking it. So hopefully that works. I haven't had time to talk to my website person yet. So if you can give us money and want to give us money for this class, great. Otherwise, I really am not worried about it. God is really faithful in providing for us. People are being so generous in blessing us with things. So totally fine. Whatever would work for you. I'll type in our 5803 McLean Boulevard, Loveland, Colorado 80538. Be Well Clinic, obviously. Yeah, it's who you'd make the check out to if you want to mail us a check. Cool. Any other questions? Sweet. It's been lovely to be on with you guys. Thanks for hanging in for the extra 25 minutes. And I hope you are all doing well. You're very welcome.
Thank you so much, Amy.
You are so welcome. Bye, everybody.